War of the Worlds has always been an interesting piece of media, from the Orson Welles radio drama Scare to the movies based on the novel. Though video games haven't exactly been as successful, at least the ones I've played. Last year I played Gray Skies, which turned War of the Worlds into a stealth and puzzle game, and it was a very flawed experience. Then comes the sequel. Yeah, it got a sequel. I remember asking the developers about it when it first came to Switch, but never heard back. So I waited for a sale to happen, grabbed it, and now am ready to talk. Here is my review of Darker Skies for the Nintendo Switch. This game takes place in an alternate version of War of the Worlds, where the Martian Invasion is over, leaving the world in shambles, filled with a disease that turned a lot of people into zombies, and piles of the mysterious red weed goo everywhere. You play as Jack, a survivor of the invasion and a minor character that showed up in Gray Skies. Humanity is trying to survive, and Jack is aiming to provide a means to rebuild. He's salvaged a heat ray from a downed tripod and is traveling around finding wreckage to reclaim parts and use it to gain access to a bunker filled with supplies. However, the game will tell you exactly zero of that before the credits roll. You get a little intro of, hey, the invasion is over, little hints that bacteria defeated the Martians, just as what happened in the original novel, and that's pretty much it. You learn about the heat ray by just finding it in the hub area of the game and seeing a whiteboard by Jack's tent detailing parts that you need for it. But I will admit that it's interesting that the actual Martians do show up in one of the game's areas, showing and confirming that while the tripods do bear a resemblance to the ones from the 2005 movie remake, this is definitely not attached to either of the War of the Worlds movies. It and Gray Skies take place in a different version of the story. When it comes to gameplay, like Gray Skies before it, this is a stealth and puzzle game with horror elements thrown in. As you play through each area, you'll be fighting or sneaking your way past enemies in order to reach the end and collect the part you need. With main progression, you have a sort of hub area you go back to in the sewers that connects it to all of the game's main areas. You can perform upgrades here in the hub with red weed extract you can find around the game, giving Jack more health or carry weight, or unlocking new throwable tools to help you combat the game's enemies. You'll always come back to the hub after clearing an area, resulting in a door unlocking to take you to the next one. Once you're in one of these areas, your goal is to find wreckage of a downed tripod in order to claim a part you need to fix the heat ray. The areas thankfully aren't really that big, not giving you that much to navigate before you go back to the hub. Enemies do roam most of these areas, so you need to do a mix of stealth and sometimes combat to get past them and reach the item you need. And this is where you realize that they didn't change very much from Gray Skies to Darker Skies. The enemies that show up here are the same two that showed up in the first game. The blind, screaming female zombie that tracks you by movement, and the pipe-wielding male zombie that follows you around if he sees you. There is a third enemy type that shows up in one of the final stages, but you only get a few of them and only in that area. Most of what you do to deal with these enemies is the same as well. You find rocks to throw and distract them so you can sneak past as they patrol the area, and you can find materials to craft together into items like smoke bombs, flashbangs, or throwing bottles of water to electrify with an electric bomb. All of these do have their uses, especially the water and lightning combo when you want to get rid of the male zombies that can see you and hit you with their pipes. But the game does also give you a pistol and plenty of ammo scattered across each area, so you can shoot your way through enemies if you want to. This kind of works, but it's pretty clunky and difficult to use. The pistol has a pretty short range, often missing every shot if they're more than 20 feet away from you, and there is a huge amount of recoil, needing you to constantly aim down more as you fire off your shots. It takes a lot of adjustment to try and get used to, especially when enemies are running at you and constantly shake the camera every time they hit you. With the extreme recoil and the fact that enemies most of the time aren't even stunned that much when you hit them with the pistol, it's clear that this was made to be there as a last resort, and the focus is supposed to be on stealthing and using the throwable items. Now with stealthing, you do have stuff to help you out. You can crouch and sneak around to silence your footsteps, and the game does give you a little pseudo dash while you're sneaking to let you move a little bit faster. You also have focus to show you objects of interest, pointing you in the direction of your objective and highlighting nearby enemies. This unfortunately makes the game a very slow and clunky adventure. The movement isn't nearly as stiff as Harper's from Gray Skies, but it is sluggish and slow. At times I found myself walking just to keep up the pace, resulting in enemies spotting me and getting into a foot chase. There is one part of the game that I felt was more up on the pacing, and that is the encounter with a tripod roughly halfway through the game. This boss fight is kinda cool, having you hide behind debris from an airplane and using mortars to attack it. Though that does feel a bit clunky over time when you have enemies spawning in and chasing you, giving you seconds to get behind cover to hide yourself from the heat ray and try to fight them off with the pistol, which as we said earlier is very clunky and difficult to use. And that's pretty much the gameplay loop, because you just go to an area, get your part, come back, and repeat until you have all of them, then activate the heat ray and end the game. And as these things come together, I do think this is a bit better than Gray Skies was. You have a little bit more you can do, and there aren't any absurd puzzle areas. I do like that most of the areas in this game are pretty short, and you're quickly back at the hub to go somewhere new. Though it doesn't make that much of a difference in content and length. Darker Skies should only take you about 4 hours to get through on your first try. This isn't terrible considering it does go on cheap sales pretty often. You've also got New Game Plus if you wish to repeat the game and get the rest of the upgrades, carrying over your items and currency from your previous run. Next up is presentation, which is a little bit weird. Visually, the game looks alright in some areas and good in others. It's got a very basic design to it, and the character model of Jack looks pretty blurred and washed out, especially when you look at his hair and face. Yet a lot of the environments look pretty good. It was a rather strange experience for me seeing Jack's face blurry as he looks at an almost pristine vending machine with every little bit of text on it clear and easy to make out and read. Then with performance, I think it's okay. The game's 30 FPS for a pretty decent amount of time, though it does drop into the 20s when you're navigating around a lot of enemies. Strangely, the frame rate absolutely tanks whenever the character model for Jack bumps into the camera, like going through doors or sneaking near corners and objects. I think overall it's fine and playable, but far from perfect. The game can be a tad glitchy though. On many occasions I found the game forcing me out of stealth and right into the blind enemy's radar. Some of these enemies ran into collision problems when trying to attack me for a while, and many of the voice clips don't spawn properly, triggering as I was leaving an area on my way back when it was clearly meant for when you enter it. The game also didn't unlock New Game Plus the first time I beat it. I had to actually go back into my save data a second time, beat the game again, and then I was able to actually go into New Game Plus. And that brings us to battery life. Darker Skies gives the original light models a range of about 2 to 3 hours, while the V2 and OLED models get 5 to 5.5 hours. In conclusion, Darker Skies is very similar to its predecessor, offering stealth and a bit of horror in a version of War of the Worlds where humanity won, but at an immense cost. Now on the downside, the game is very clunky in a lot of different ways, has a lot of little frame drops, and the new pistol mechanic meant to help you get away from the stealth doesn't really work that well. It's an okay game and I enjoyed it a bit more than Gray Skies, but the formula definitely needed a lot more tweaking than just a new enemy, a hub, and a clunky pistol before having released a fully fledged sequel. Reviews to Go rates Darker Skies for the Nintendo Switch a 4 out of 10. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. Thank you for watching and have a great day.